Okay, so now what a challenge, right? So, hello, buenos dias, bon dia, anything I can think of. A warm welcome to our audience attending today's webinar. I'm Laz Gonzalez of Zift Solutions, and I'm going to lead our discussion today on what's driving value in B2B channels in 2021. As the saying goes, may you live in interesting times. Boy, the last 12 months have certainly been challenging for anyone involved in not just business, but B2B channels in particular. Extremely challenging, but what lies ahead? How can companies continue to drive value in 2021 and beyond? What a question. A question that I'm going to be joined by some really thought leaders in answering. But before I do that, I just want you to know that you can also try and answer these questions and join in on the discussion using the chat. So I saw that many of you were already using us to tell us where you're from. That's awesome. But also, if you've got a question about the subject, put it in there. We'll try to address it during the webinar. If not, we'll take it to the end and also save some time for that. But as I was saying, what does lie ahead? And I mentioned that joining me to answer that question are two exceptional ladies who also happen to be thought leaders in the areas of channel strategy and channel incentives. Teresa Cangrel, CEO of AchieveUnite, and Kristen Cole, Client Director at Vistex. Before we begin, let's give them a chance to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you've been up to in your organizations. And Teresa, why don't you go first?
Thanks, Laz. Teresa Caraval. We have built over the last 36 months a consulting, strategy, and program company, as well as education, and which is a very deep passion of mine. And I'm really proud to say that our business has grown through COVID. It's changed from where it was a year ago. But it's really an exciting time for our company and for the clients who we consider partners, and a number of you are our friends in industry. So I'm really happy that we've been able to accomplish that through the last year. And I'm really tired of COVID, and I'm ready for something different. And so I'm looking forward to 2021.
Who isn't, right?
As am I.
And Kristen, from Portland, Oregon, you've got a special perspective on this as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Absolutely. Well, from Vistex, I take this from the incentive management systems and services perspective. Over the last year, we've really seen, obviously this hit hard with our clients, but been able to help them work through whether they're making changes or not making changes, talking to them about the best practices on what to do here, and really just standing beside them to continue to make this a success and help their partners ultimately.
Right. And motivation, rewards, incentives, all of that really plays a big part today. You know, those aren't just the only things that are going to drive value. We sat down and thought about for the last couple of weeks, what are the game changers? What are the levers that you should be thinking about as you look to expand your program or just keep it going into the new year? And we're going to go one by one on these. And yes, we'll talk about partner engagement. Yes, we'll talk about measurement and marketing. I could see the comments coming in. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the influencer. And I just want to reach out to Teresa and just kind of ask a question. Why is the influencer so important, and how is that going to drive value over the next year?
Well, and the influencer ties directly to the partner ecosystem, because what's happened in this world, right, is we no longer have events. We no longer have all of these old mechanisms that we connected with people and moved opportunities forward, expanded new opportunities. And so now we have to rely, and we should be relying and engaging and empowering influencers. Laz, you're an influencer in the industry. You might refer our company to someone. Kristen, there's this whole notion of how do we, really capitalize and leverage one another more successfully. And the beautiful thing about it is I see it happening very naturally and organically in this new world. But there are some companies who are almost missing the boat, right, in leveraging their not just a channel, their entire partner ecosystem And I absolutely believe 100% going on record saying every single company needs a partner ecosystem. They have a small company, an MSP, a large company, you have to have a partner ecosystem. Doesn't mean you have to have direct channel fulfillment, but you have to have a partner ecosystem of which influencers are RPs.
So this whole thing about the trusted advisor, it's never gone away. The partner is still there to do the things that we expect them to do, I think you're saying, and that's kind of ratcheted up a bit.
Yeah, right. And the trusted advisor, the devil's in the details, right? You might be a trusted advisor, Laz, in one arena of partnering. Someone else might be a trusted advisor in another. And we go ask those people, right, on a regular basis. We solicit feedback from different people. And so how do we make sure that we as organizations understand who our influencers are and that we are really communicating and engaging our influencers?
I feel like there's a point behind the point here, and Kristen, you jump in if you've got a take on this. But
Okay.
you hear that now. There's all these other things all these other places where buyers can buy products. A lot of the SaaS-based stuff, it's all automatic. And why do we need the partner? Right, that there's all the argument like, will marketplaces reduce the value of the partner? And you're saying no, right? You're saying that somebody's got to convince the customer, maybe not the way that we used to transact, but that influencer is still very important, right?
I think the influencer is incredibly important. And while a good majority of buyers are doing the research on their own and then engaging with the partners and vendors much later in the sales cycle, there still has to be something that takes them over that line. And when you think about what happens throughout the sales cycle, they're still being influenced along the way to even do that research, right? So I think as channel leaders, you can look at how do you help promote the influencer through your incentive programs, maybe targeted co-marketing funding, or provide customer focused content that your influencers are going to be able to use. And of course, that starts with an action of trying to figure out, like Teresa said, who are the influencers for
Yeah.
your particular company or your partners? Who are they listening to on a daily basis? Figuring that out, and then what you could potentially provide them.
It's interesting. We're getting questions about working with partners who might not have the skills and knowledge about your products. So if you're a SaaS company and that influencer is someone who may have been providing some managed services and very much on premise for that customer, how do you get them? How do you get their attention? What's the way to bring them in and bring them into the fold? Any ideas there?
Yeah, and I think the question around how do you get the traditional companies into the SaaS world, right? That's one question, which is around identifying the elements of value and partner engagement that you can have with them, and we have to get much more clear about what's in it for these partners and how much effort many of these partners are just struggling to keep it going, right? It's very difficult for some of them. There's a few that I see really growing through all of this, but so we have to cut through the noise and make it very easy for these companies to engage and profitable, right? Because they have a lot of choices right now.
What's in it for them? I get
Right.
that. Always reminding them what's in it for them. So on that question specifically, should a SaaS company look at traditional resellers and try, and what does it take to get their attention, to get them productive? I always said it's easy to make a partnership, but it's really hard to change somebody's business model, right? And I would be on the lookout for companies that have already made the switch to the cloud and are reselling similar ancillary products, then try to convince them that they should change their business.
That's where I was going to go next. You very likely have to look at new partner types and new ideal partner profiles in some of these cases.
That's right. Well, that's for sure, because now all companies are taking that approach of tiering them separately and looking at different segments. So, if you're out there, just remember this influencer idea is really important. The trusted advisor is still there. It's not going to go away for 2021, especially when they have those relationships and maybe you need to help them connect with those customers digitally. That might be one of the things. The second point, and I just want to stop here for a second and talk a little bit about this point and see what what Kristen, you have to say, because we were having a conversation about this. I remember in my past life as an analyst, we used to say companies that have tighter alignment between sales and marketing can drive up to 20% more productivity.
Right.
Now, Jonathan, who's producing this event, he gives me the right numbers. I can't say 20; it's between 15 and 19, and I have to say it a certain way now.
Yeah.
But no doubt, this has always
I think
been.
those numbers are going to go up though, Laz, over the
Why
next
do you
12
say
months.
that? Why do you say that? And why is this such an important point to think about in 2021?
Because what was historically marketing is now more business development. What was historically sales is now done often from a traditional marketing perspective. So these roles are blending. And so if we keep our traditional look at marketing and sales, I don't think it works anymore. I think it's market selling. It's something much different. And, I think it's going to change dramatically.
It's no longer sales and marketing, 3 words. Maybe it's sales and marketing, it's 1 word now, right? Where the alignment has to be there 100%.
Well, and you're seeing very progressive CEOs, they are linking sales and marketing much, much tighter than they ever have.
Right.
We're beginning. Yeah, I totally agree. Callie said it's the revenue team, right? It's
Absolutely.
the chief revenue officer. And I agree with you. Marketing managers, Nellie says, to transition to revenue marketers. I think that's super important.
Okay.
That's one large team about building the revenue. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are some places, like, for instance, we've had a couple of questions on partner engagement, and it's so hard to get that partner's attention. And I'm kind of thinking that it's sales and marketing trying to bring that partner to the table, right? And a lot of times, even on our platform, our customers are asking, what are the other guys doing? How do they get better engagement? And in fact, we came up with a bunch of points and had some, high-level discussions with them. And one of the things that came through to me was the companies who have this engagement and are aligned are the ones that are marketing is working with sales together to enlist the partner into activities that are revenue generating. Sales is making this a sort of a milestone for that partner. So if they want to rise in their program, they have to do these things on the other side of the fence that are very important, right? So I guess that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
It is, and you heard it here. I firmly believe we have to move marketing and partners. It's a partner-led deal, it's a marketing-led deal, and we put marketing and partners in competition with one another, right? And that's a risky business because look at how many touches it takes to bring a new opportunity into our company's funnels, and you don't always know where that source is. So I think the more you can align metrics that put marketing and partners together as a team and reward later in the sales cycle, I believe that is super important and will help companies be more successful.
Okay.
Yeah, Rachel, good point. She says multi-attribution models, right? Of which partners are one, and we're not penalizing one over the other, right? We're rewarding for multis.
Right.
Right. So it sounds like what we're thinking about, that whole experience, that where can sales and marketing align with the partner in the channel? And that leads us to our third point, right? What does that experience look like? And why is it such a big thing to focus on the partner's journey, Teresa, in 2021? I mean, this was something that we kind of did before. What's different about it that's going to make it a game changer?
I think what I see is a lot of companies say they do map the partner's journey, but what they've actually done is they have a customer journey, and sometimes they have partners weaved into it. Sometimes they don't even have that adequately done, right? So there's one part of it, which is really getting the devil in the details of where your partners can fit into the customer journey. And the second one is the partner experience is becoming a huge thing, right, in 2021. The research we did with CompTIA, it is one of the biggest game changers for companies. If you provide a great partner experience, people will do business with you, even if compensation is equal, right? And so if you are going to provide a great partner experience, you have to provide a great partner journey. And that means we have to understand, yes, Callie, we'll get you the link for that research right away. People have to understand every element of their partner journey, and then how can they leverage the Zifts and the Vistex of the world to make that a better experience? How can they use more deep engagement touch points in that? And if you can document it, then you can improve it.
So is it Kristen, is it front loaded incentives to get, for example, get a lot of questions about cloud partners? Is it front loaded incentives that you kind of like put out to the partner and say, come and join us this way? Or is it kind of finish line or somewhere in between that you would think about to kind of align to this journey?
I've got to say it's somewhere in between. It's definitely not a one size fits all. I mean, you've got your rebates and your MDF. They're definitely table stakes. More and more companies are coming in with rewards-based programs, which helps incentivize different people within a partner ecosystem, but then also being able to incentivize along the way. So a lot of what we've seen historically has been, getting over that finish line and rewarding for the lagging indicators of the sales. But more and more, it needs to be what happens in the beginning of that funnel, what happens in the middle, and how can you help really make a difference along the way. But at the same time, figuring out how to leverage that partner experience so you're not making things too complicated either. It's got to be worth their time. And like Teresa said, everything could be equal, but if the experience is that much better, that's where they're going to spend their time.
Well, this kind of dovetails us, and I don't want to leave the mapping of the journey, right? But you just said it, it's not a one size fits all. And a lot of times we talk about cash incentives, we talk about incentives to become certified, all of these things. It really depends on who you're talking to, right? So I get it, Teresa. Before you said, yeah, a lot of people talk about the journey, but they really haven't done anything concrete there. Aren't we telling them now, hey, it's not even that. You now have to personalize this to who you're talking to in that partner organization. What's going on?
Amen, right? The journey for a CEO of an MSP that is going to spend a couple of minutes with you is different than the journey for a big SI or a big consultant, business unit leader versus a sales rep. So 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and I think the important part here is to know what's working for who. And maybe, Kristen, you might have some insights. In the beginning, it's usually, if you're attracting a new partner organization into your program, a lot of times maybe the technical people find out about you and they make recommendations. But early on, there's someone who's going to give it a yay or an nay, right? And that's somebody probably more on the business side. What works for them to get them to kind of convince that this is going to be a good relationship?
On the business side, it's almost goes back to the influencers, right? You've got influencers across multiple departments that help really influence what's going to be done. And if we're viewing the program from the partner's perspective, and that perspective could be from different departments as well, right? And then personalizing those sales plays and what happens to be able to leverage their strengths and ultimately their capabilities. I think it's going to really be different from each viewpoint, but that will help drive higher engagement in the end, and using incentives to reward the partners who show that higher engagement. But it's not a one size fits all on how success is going to look within those partners.
Right, and I think some of the comments we're getting in the chat around that motion that you want those partners to follow, that's going to be unique. And so maybe we're not just saying that there are different characters that appear during the journey, but that those journeys might be slightly different for the different types of individuals. And I really get your point about aligning those sales plays. And that's where I think it's really important to know something about, your partner so that you can do all of these great things like personalize content for them, have specific messages about what's in it for them if they're a business leader. I'm kind of thinking that there's some blocking and tackling things that you can do here, but there's more, right? There's a
Always
little bit,
more.
Yeah, there's a little bit more, and few companies really reach that. Teresa, do you have any examples of companies that have really personalized this to the point where they have better engagement as a result?
Yeah, I definitely see. I see companies like Nutanix doing some super innovative things at the partner. And they've eliminated tiers in their partner program and have really focused on competencies and capabilities. I think what Nick Tidd is doing at Poly is really innovative, and they're automating the entire journey. Um, I think Christian's really onto something in the way he's approached it, and he's quite innovative. The other thing I see people doing is we're really starting to realize how important the people of these partners are, and how do we develop the people. If anything, COVID has shown us that we need to invest in our people, and they're one of our most precious, right, differentiators. And we hadn't been doing that a lot in the last several years. And so I've seen that change a lot in the last 12 months.
That's a good point, Teresa. I think treating people a little bit differently within them and showing how much you care has made a big difference, where the people maybe, I mean, not necessarily viewed as a commodity, right? But I mean, people really need something a little bit more now. And those vendors that are treating their partners and their people a little bit differently, I think are seeing a little bit more success today.
Yeah, someone in the chat box just mentioned something about competency paths and making sure that partners are on the right track, and you've got content aligned to that, and you've got that personalized to the individuals. I think you guys are hitting some great points here. One of the things I've always heard in this area is that you and the partners have to have the same language together, right? And sometimes,
Yes.
sometimes at the supplier level, we have, the buzzwords and the cool tools, but
Mm-hmm.
at the partner level, they don't have all of that. And sometimes when we talk about things, they hear something else. And
Yep.
I say that because one of the big game changers moving forward to 2021 that we've agreed on is managing that sales and marketing alignment with respect to the sales funnel or the marketing funnel, whatever you want to call it now, because now it's probably the same one. Uh, but if you don't have the same understanding of what that funnel is, right? If your partner doesn't look at it that way, then as uh, as someone used to say, you got a lot of splaining to do, right? What are your thoughts there, Teresa, on marketing and sales funnel contribution? Why is this so important in 2021?
Well, I think managing, lead, we talked about leading and lagging indicators, which are really important. And how do we manage behaviors in the early to mid part of the funnel development, which we identify in our customer journeys? And then how do we reward those? How do we incent those? How do we drive those knobs and dials to make it easier for partners to hit those? I remember doing an engagement, and inadvertently, the leader of the company said, when we do a demo, 95% of those turn to deals. And I said, well, then we need to drive demos as a critical part of the journey. And we have to drive our incentives and our behaviors for those to create that experience.
That's interesting. What you're saying is that you almost have to have a much more granular look at the funnel
The
and
devil's
apply
in the
pressure as
details.
needed.
Yes.
Apply pressure as needed. Now, but let's talk about game changers, right? Where are the real force multipliers here? And I want to tap into your experience and Kristen, and thinking about where specifically, and I'm thinking about things like what our audience is asking here, how do I get more results, right? So do you incent them for registering deals? Do you incent them for reporting on opportunities? Do you incent them on doing the things that make this better? What do you think, Kristen?
I think those are all great things that a company could be incenting on. It's got to come down though to, like Teresa was saying, what's going to make the biggest impact for your company and ultimately for how the partners work, right? So understand if you have that right mix, and even within that mix, for example, do you have the right mix of activities within an MDF program, right? How do the partners conduct their business is what you're offering, right? Everybody had events. There's not events going on except maybe virtual events now for the partners. But what else could you modify within your program and your activities available to be able to do something different for today's marketplace? And then we talked about earlier rewarding throughout the funnel, and maybe that's points based because you're talking about actions throughout, right? Where your rebates are your lagging indicator paid at the end, your MDF is throughout, but that's just to offset marketing costs. What about making sure we're paying attention to the person who's maybe doing the marketing at the partner, or which is sometimes few and far between because a lot don't have marketing, but the sales reps, the systems engineers, and what are those behaviors that would lead them to be successful, such as demos? If a demo is going to, what'd you say, Teresa, 90% lead to a sale? Absolutely, and send on that demo. Absolutely.
Great. And that's a great idea. Folks, I think, could take that one back and actually apply it. So I think the key here is have a broader perspective on the funnel, right? It's not a one size fits all. So you can't just say, I'm going to do it this way. I need to really think about what behaviors I want those partners to do. If I have issues with the top of the funnel and getting past that demo validation stage, right? Apply the incentive there as needed, right? And think about the other parts the same way. You know, we keep on talking about the partner and some of the things that they need to do and that the supplier needs to do. But, we know that not everyone's going to make it. And some companies have raised their hand and asked for help. Teresa, this was one of the points that you were kind of advocating around only the fittest will survive. What does it take to win in 2021 if you're a partner?
If you're a partner, what I see, I was hosting an advisory council yesterday, and interesting to hear the dialogues. The partners who are growing this year, on that one in particular, they doubled down on their existing customers. They doubled down on customer service and solving the big digital transformation, remote networking, a lot of these security, these big areas, right, that their clients are sort of stuck. They optimize their cost models. They're actually doubling down and investing in key areas that they know they need to get ready for 2021. So they didn't stop investing in their people, stop investing in new skills. They kept going in that. I think many of these partners, to somebody that talked about in the chat, they're on the transformation journey, right? A lot of them are shifting their business models. They're moving from recurring revenue, they're moving their maintenance to different kinds of professional services. They've got a lot of transformations going, and they're laser focused on what those transformations are and how they're going to do them.
Well, some key words there, right? And I heard you say it twice, the idea of the digital transformation, right? And I don't know how much more to dial this up right now because, we have to recognize that if anything we learned in the last 12 months is that there has been a displacement taking place. It's at the last mile and it's between the partner and the customer. And we used to rely on that partner to go knock on some doors and meet with people and do golf outings and do whatever it was that was necessary. And that's not there today, right now, right? I'm not saying that it's not going to be there tomorrow, but we're talking about the next 12 months and what is it going to take for that partner to survive? And I guess the point I'm making here is that digital transformation. I think the supplier has got to step in and help the partner transform so that they can do the things digitally that they would normally do, mano a mano with that customer, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're thinking about this out there and you're thinking about what kind of transformation I need to help my partners make, I think there's some economic things that you can help them with as a supplier. But there's this other piece of it, which is, help them communicate with their partners. And like you, Teresa, I sat on a panel where, we were talking about what's different. And I remember a friend of ours, Mike Gallagher at FireEye, who was talking about, hey, I'm seeing us needing to do some of this marketing for our partners. Now, who would want to do that, right? And you think about it, if you can create the right plays, you can get partners to, receive the leads or work with you on the dispensation of those, then you could run the actual programs, you could run the campaigns, you could run them on autopilot for that partner, right? So there's a lot of different approaches here to help that partner transform, whether it's through partner marketing or for partner marketing. And I think that that's something that, our audience should keep an eye on. What do you guys think? Any thoughts on that?
I think there's also a lot of things that you can just consider offering up to your partners to make things easier for them to execute upon that. Whether it's tools or systems, automation is really important with that as well. And, from my perspective on that incentive side, where we come from, ensuring that your partners are paid quickly, not sitting on their projects approvals or their claim approvals and then ultimately getting them paid. Help move those things through as quickly as possible to be able to help keep that cash flow going, because that ties to all the things Teresa was saying about that overinvestment in what they're doing with their employees. They've got to have that cash flow to be able to do that. And it's so good to hear you say that, Teresa, that that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, as you just said that, Laz, and I do agree with Kristen, and I also think we as vendors, it's like, oh, we're going to give them our hot sheet so they can put their logo on it. And what we need to do a better job of is, how do we give them something that they can wrap their value around, and they can make it their sweet sauce, their stickiness, their value offerings? And how do we as vendors get much better about doing that in a more systematic, automated way?
Wouldn't you think that every supplier is trying to get their partners to react this way? If you had 3 or 4 really go-to suppliers, all 4 of them are probably coming at you with different ways that you can transform your business. I think it's a real challenge if you're a partner, who to listen to. You guys are putting some great ideas there on what some of these suppliers should think about to help transform their partners. But I think it still goes back to the care and feeding of those partners and taking some ownership for it, and not being so one and done, right? Sometimes I've worked in organizations myself where, we're just happy to get that thing done. And for the partner, it's like a drive-by. Well, that's a great training program, but I don't have time for that right now. Or that's a great marketing portal, and I don't have time for that now. And I think you got to get that commitment from them up front so that you can make them better, right? I think that's the main thing.
That's a key piece. And by the way, I moved overnight to the beach, and I love this camping area. So I'm liking all these visuals of places that we can go be.
Good. Yeah. If you don't get any good channel advice, at least you get some ideas what to do when you could break free after COVID.
Oh, there's another one. We can go to the mountains.
So kind of like, to do the last thing and to do just about everything that we've talked about up until now, you need to know something about your partners. And one of the key winning strategies that we all have agreed on is turn data into your competitive advantage, right? Not just use data, but now turn it to your competitive advantage. But let's take a step back into reality here. When you work with different suppliers, what do you find they really know about their partner? And I'll put that out to Kristen first and see what she has to say.
Data is a really meaty topic. And just over the last year, one of my colleagues, Dave Hafferman, spent a lot of time, talking about this and doing some webinars and stuff. But typically when we think of data and channel data management overall, it's point of sale, right? But I think you've got to look beyond that and data about the partner specifically, because you've got to get down to the meat and potatoes of it, of the data model, the levels of data quality, who's processing and managing the quality of that data and then keeping it current, because you can't have that competitive advantage and do what you need to with the data unless you know if it's accurate and up to date. And of course, measurement and governance is really important when it comes to your data.
Right. There's performance data, right, which is kind of like, I think, what would add the most value to your revenue and your contribution. And it sounds like that's what some of the folks that are asking questions are most interested in. And I think the measurement and governance that you just said, right? What if they don't know how to measure? Their idea of marketing is working is, I sent out 1,000 emails and I got, 20 callbacks that we're now following. That's their measurement, right?
Right.
How do you get through that knowledge gap and show them how to measure this correctly?
If you're looking at this from the partner and the vendor perspective, as a vendor, it's probably up to you to help train your partners. Your CDMs and CAMs can go out there and say, if you're doing this, this is what looks good, right? So a lot of times if you're looking at email campaigns, you're like, oh gosh, I only got a 10% open rate and a 3% click-through rate. That could actually be really good depending on the quality of your list and what you're looking at. So I think if you can help them understand what good looks like, then they're going to feel a lot better about what they're doing, or know that they need to make changes because it's not working.
And so rally them towards that performance, right? And not get so caught up in the variables, especially those finish line results that you say people start with. I get that. You know, competitive advantage means that as a supplier, you're using this to win. And I think one of the ways that companies are starting to think about this differently is to become more predictive, as some of the comments being made in the chat mention. At Zift, what we're trying to do is look at stores of data of what's happened on our platform and predict what will happen next. So as we look at, for example, a partner takes certain training classes and then moves on and executes their first marketing campaign and uses a list a certain way, we can say, well, if you look at that campaign, maybe they sent an email and they sent a social post and so on, and you could see the different touches. And you then look at other partners who've done those first couple of steps, and you could say, hey, the ones that actually went on to do the webinar and to do the next thing actually generated some leads. So let me go back to this set of partners who are just getting started and suggest you should do this other activity, because this is going to, and it might go to the question that's being asked there, well, how am I going to get their attention? How do I look at these a little bit differently? You need this kind of data, first of all, right? You need to be able to look at what's happened in the past and predict what will happen forward. But you need to make this very practical. We find that, our ability to do this is to literally generate a potential, lead, message to the partner, something that shows them what's in it for them. So
the prediction is absolutely where we want to get with this, right? We can look at our point in time metrics and our analysis of looking at what's happened over the last 3 months or 6 months, and all that's great, but we absolutely want to get to that point where you can predict, if you do A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z, you're going to get this result, or a higher propensity to get that result.
Yeah, and I just want one other comment on this. First, I look at turn data into your competitive advantage, and I feel we have to say turn data and people, because the data is only as good as the people who are able to take the data and use it to drive business outcomes and use it to do things differently. And so, I think, how do we intersect those two together and really educate our folks and our partner folks in having different strategic conversations, ...
Well, I don't disagree with you. I never disagree with you, especially when you are sitting in such a pretty beach there. But I think you're right. I think it's about taking that next step, right? And there's some baselines here that we can all admit many suppliers don't even have basic data about their partners. Right? And whether it's value scoring, as been brought up in the comments, or just basic contact information beyond the single point of contact, right? We have to start there, and we have to then look to the next level. And the winning companies are looking to the next level. They're looking to be more predictive. They're looking to personalize that journey. They're looking to focus on the things that worked in the past that could work in the future. So that's our message to you as you're listening to this point. Let's put it back on the partners, though. I've heard about this before, and I'm not 100% sold on it, but the idea of building bridges across a partner ecosystem. Well, a lot of fancy words there, but let's take a moment and look at that wonderful picture that we have on the slide.
I love your images. They're fantastic. Great job, Zift.
For those of us who just want a visual break, right, from what's going on. This is, I believe this is the Tower Bridge, and if this changes, I want to tell you a story of something that happened to me on the Tower Bridge. But
we got to hear about that.
Nevertheless, the idea is about building bridges with partners, across partners, and I talked about through partner and for partner. Let's just put this in context. Suppliers are helping partners connect with customers, right? They've tried to help partners connect with each other, but that's kind of always gone tepid, right? Because there's always a wonder of, is this really working? Do they want to work with each other? Co-opetition, all of those things. In the cloud, multi-vendor solutions kind of force these strange bedfellows sometimes, right? I'll live with that. But the second piece of this is, what kind of connections can the supplier make between the customer and the partner, right, for their mutual benefit? So in other words, is there something they can do for them with that customer? So any ideas there?
I'm happy to take this one. Great. If you hear about, it sounds like a very ferocious dog in the background, but she's actually only 45 pounds, really sweet, but she sounds very mean right now. So first of all, the ecosystem itself, right? So we talked about influencers, we talked about vendor to vendor partnerships, we talk about meeting in the channel, so now it's all of these different types of partners, and then how do we create value between them? And Larissa at Gigamon, in fact, I'll also post the blog. She during the course of the research we did on partner experience, one of the things we really uncovered is how much value these multi-vendor solutions and these partners taking all of this into the market are, but it's really hard to do. And so what are the levers that you use in order to do that? And I think there's a lot of value that we as vendors can create for these partners by doing that, because we make their job a lot easier, but it looks complex to the customer, right? And so, I would encourage us to focus on that. And then the only last thing is, when I was a channel chief at Sienna and Extreme, I swear I thought I understood everything about being a partner. I thought I was really smart, lads. And then I became a partner and started my own company, and I didn't understand half of it about P&Ls and financials and all of those things that are so important for growing a company. So I feel like live in the other company's shoes and the other executive's shoes as much as possible and really try to understand their challenges. And we have to get better at that.
Really, and some of that stuff is really basic for a large company, but you think about the partner organization that you want to resell your cloud solution, that maybe they're not versed on ARR payments to their sales reps, and they need a little bit of help there, right?
Right. And that's a great point.
So that's an example of where I think this could happen. I see some companies sometimes taking the first couple of steps in connecting their partners with their customers, but kind of not following through. And I think that the follow through is so important right now.
That's a great point.
It is.
You think about like partner locators, right? Where everybody's got one. I bet everyone on this call's got a partner locator. And the whole idea is, the customer's looking to find a partner where they can buy your product or get some valuable service from that partner. And what we normally do is we just kind of connect them, and we point them to their website, and we audit their websites to make sure that they're good and they could be featured here, or maybe we ask them for a blurb if we don't want them to go away. But I mean, the shopping doesn't stop there. I mean, when's the last time you went looking for a car and you didn't get a phone call or you didn't get an email, right? And I think that we have to kind of think that way. There's a consumerization of some of these approaches that we could learn from, especially connecting partners with customers, because I don't see it terribly hard, Teresa and Kristen, for a supplier to start a drip marketing campaign with that lead who came to the locator to find the partner.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And there's also, Laz, I agree with you on that point. And Nellie and Rachel are talking about alliances and strategic alliances, and the need to bring, we should bring that into the conversation. And then let's say, Laz, you have a strategic alliance with Vistex, and then your partners are meeting together and leveraging that strategic alliance. And, that magic can be really powerful.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point with the alliances. There's always the dispute, and this question has kind of popped up, and I want to address them. A lot of suppliers go out there to go find net new customers, right? And they go to the partner, and the partner, as someone mentions, are highly dependent on, the supplier's customers. Well, I think there needs to be a certain amount of reality here. First and foremost is that those aren't net new customers for the most part. That partner, if they're worth their weight in salt, or they're in business, is because they've been doing something good with a set of customers that they have, right? And if they're not, if they're just starting out, you might want to reconsider whether you want them to join your program, right? But if they are, then you have to realize that they cannot talk to them as strangers, right? That account-based marketing, and I know, Kristen, this is something that you really feel passionate about. You need to understand that they have to market to those customers using some data that makes them feel like they know what they're talking about, and they can make them real offers. What do you
They
think?
do. I mean, just think about, point back to the customization of it in your day-to-day lives, Laz and Teresa, when you're getting information that's very much targeted to you, and it just makes that much more sense and gets you maybe to take that next step and do that extra research on your own to be able to, to just dive in. It just, people think, what's in it for me, right? It can't be what's in it for me if me is not part of that equation.
Right, right. I used to remember a data point. A customer that knows you is 3 times more likely to take you up on an offer than a customer that doesn't know you. So if that customer already has a relationship with a partner, why not use some of that data to build a bridge between the supplier and the customer, right? Yeah. So really important point there. Okay. So we got all these knowledge bombs that we've kind of dropped during this webinar, and everybody's kind of picked up on them. We will make this presentation available to the folks who have joined us. So we have your email address. We'll set up a page where you can come in and get the presentation. We really appreciate all the conversation and discussion going on in the chat. That really makes this worthwhile. But before we go, and we'll have a little bit of time here, I want to get some predictions, right? And I'll say this: I just heard a podcast today where they said, if you have 100 if you have 100 visionaries, 98% of them are having hallucinations. So so with that, I just want to kind of look forward. We're talking 2021. But what lies ahead? What are some of those things that are, changing and will, fulfill some of these things for the need to survive, the need to do better, the need to transform? And I want to see what you guys have to think about this. I have my own thoughts, which I'll share with you. But Kristen, what's in that channel crystal ball that you can see?
My crystal ball that I've been working over, really peering deeply. There's a lot of things floating around in that I see it. But the one thing that I would hope would be there but there's a big hope because it's such a challenging piece, but is channel data management, to really help these companies and these partners go into 2021 and beyond really understanding their data and what they can do. It's a really challenging thing to work on, but it really pays off when it's done properly.
Channel data management, and I think we're coming of age, right? This is starting to be a reality as we break down silos across these different things. So data is a great point. Teresa, any thoughts from the beach?
Oh, you're on mute, Teresa.
Yeah. Every company needs a partner ecosystem, and marketplaces.
Okay, you got to tell us a little bit more about that. Like, we know the ecosystem piece, but how are you seeing this marketplace thing involve, and what should our listeners think about?
Well, I was just on the phone with someone earlier today, and we were talking about the App Direct buying up several of the master agents in the tech channel. And, many of us know the distributors of the world that are building incredible marketplaces. The funding tech data just got bought by private equity, and they're investing dramatically in marketplaces. Amazon, the biggest marketplace in the world, Salesforce. So there's a lot happening in this marketplace, and it's going to keep evolving and keep expanding. But I still believe there's tremendous services that can get wrapped around that, especially for complex solutions.
Okay, but marketplaces over here and the rise of the influencer over here.
That's
so let's
right.
make sure we factor those partners in,
Yep,
right?
that's a great point.
Yeah, that's the key. I want to kind of share just one thought nugget that I picked up around this topic of what's happening, what will happen. I never took this seriously, the reading of the tea leaves. I was an analyst for like 8 years, and every time somebody would ask me to predict something, I'd get it wrong. So I never predicted anything. But I did hear a study. It was a study of small to mid-sized organizations and enterprises, SMEs. And it was around the 2008, 2009 downturn. And they surveyed over 200 of these companies that were still in business today, right? And they said, what did you do different in 2008, 2009, when things were really rough? What did you do different to put you where you are today? So almost like, let's look at the fittest and how they survived. And 65% of them said that they chose that moment to pivot, to change what they were doing before, to try a new approach. Maybe for you, it's to try a new route to market, a different type of partner, a new geography, a new product offering, whatever it is. All these companies did this. And I think that there's a positive message there. After all we've been through, some of us have to keep our heads and kind of think about that pivot and what's different for us. And I'm sure, Teresa, you would agree. And Kristen, we've all had to pivot, right?
Pivot's key. Yeah. I mean, how often are we pivoting this last year? Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're all making changes. So I'll leave these last 2 minutes. I know we've been answering questions in the talk track, which I think is fantastic. I want to do more of this way. I'd like to thank both of you for joining me today. Time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Yeah, and it was really easy conversation. And from the comments that we've been getting, it sounds like it was very valuable to the folks that were listening. As I mentioned, we'll reach out to you with a place where you can go to download the presentations. And again, thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you so much, Teresa, for joining us today, and all our audience that have joined us. Thank you as well.
Yeah,
Have a great holiday. Good luck. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Laz. Y'all did a great job.
Teresa, thanks, Laz. And thanks to everyone for joining. Really appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.